One. What's up, everyone? Coach Tony here. In this training, we're going to talk about why you actually shouldn't trust your high school counselor or even your neighbors. So it's a really interesting training. We're basically going to demystify some myths that we hear from our families. Myself and our special co-host for today, we talk to a lot of families on a daily basis, and we keep hearing a lot of these things that keep coming up, and we're like, who told you this? And then a lot of it, unfortunately, is like their neighbors, their friends, and their counselors. So we decided, hey, let's just kind of try to demystify our loss as much as possible. I'll be one of your co-hosts for today. My name is Coach Tony. I'm actually a former UC Berkeley admissions reader that ended up reading like over 20,000 applications during my time as a reader, understanding what colleges really look for in a student. I ended up becoming a director at UCLA. I opened my own high school and even became TikTok's first college admissions partner. For the last 16 years, I've been helping families with the college admissions process. And it all kind of started off with my time at Berkeley. And that's where I met our co-host for today as well. So we actually go really, really long, way back together. Let me go ahead and let him introduce himself, Coach Victor.
Hey everyone, I'm Coach Victor. It's a pleasure to meet you. If it's our first time meeting, for those who don't know, I used to work in admissions with Coach Tony way back in the day. We actually learned about college admissions all together at the same time. And so we're excited to be able to work together again. And just a quick kind of professional background for myself. In terms of time after undergrad, I worked in a lot in terms of school districts. I worked on school district policy. I worked in nonprofits working with school districts and working on education technology too. And one of the things that I've come across was actually working a lot with counselors and working with school district staff members. And they're very different from the college counselors that are college counselors and college coaches like us. And we're here to kind of explain that now. In regards to myself, also, something I would want to point as a fun fact for my education technology experience, I worked at a scheduling company called Able, Always Be Learning, ABL for short. And at Able, one of the things that we worked on was how to create tools and products for counselors to use to be able to do their job better. One of the things that you're going to learn about this whole entire experience is what are the things that high school counselors are saying to you and also neighbors are saying to you, and why is it that you might not want to trust their word on it per se. And so um, one of the things that I want folks to also know is what is actually the job of a high school counselor. Their main job, their main role is to make sure their students graduate from high school. It's not necessarily to get them into the best colleges. So that being said, right, they're trained in their school districts on how can I get my students to take all the courses that they need for high school graduation, but not necessarily what will stand out on the college application. Furthermore, a really interesting fact is that high school counselors are also incentivized to try to fill up their classrooms because one of the things that they're trying to do is to make their school schedule efficient. What that means is like, let's say, for example, you have a honors course, an AP course, and a regular course. If there's a course that has only 5 students in there, then that means that they are wasting money and that the counselor's job is that they need to figure out either how to get more students into that classroom or how to eliminate that classroom altogether so that way they can move people around. Why is this important? Well, it's because it's showing that this is incentivizing high school counselors to optimize for their resources, for their schedule, not necessarily for your student trying to get into college. Okay. So and I'm sure many people have never learned about that fact before, but that's why, in terms of one of the reasons, in terms of their incentive, and why is it that you should not necessarily always take the word for their tips.
That's awesome.
So
No, no,
I would transition over to Coach Tony.
of course, no. I think even I didn't even know that. I think that's the beauty of our coaches knowing a lot of information about the education system. You can see again, Coach Victor's been involved in education his whole life. I've been involved basically. I think pretty much our adult lives, we've always been involved in the education's process in some way. And one of the things is that Coach Victor, you can see, super knowledgeable guy. He's actually one of our advisors. So in case if anyone's interested in like a free coaching call at the end of today, you might actually run into Coach Victor as one of the person doing your call, and you'll see today he is a wealth of knowledge. I still learn from him today as well too. So let me go ahead and share the screen. We kind of came up with a few things that I think we hear a lot. I think Coach Victor, we're like, we've been talking a lot of families, and they're like, wait, who told you that? It's like, it was always the counselor or my neighbor told me this. So we kind of just compiled it. We basically looked at the last 100 calls that we had, and we pulled up, here's the most common things that we've heard a lot of families say to us. And we're going to be like, yep. And this call will be like, yep, here, that is true. Or let's see if we can demystify that a little bit for you and give you some more context that perhaps that counselor or that neighbor doesn't know the full picture yet. So, Coach Victor, I think the format, I'm just going to ask you, if that's cool with you, I'm just going to kind of ask you if you want to go ahead and just ramble, and then I'll probably just chime in as well too. So the first thing we hear a lot from a counselor is you should take this easier course to raise your GPA. Maintaining a 4.0 is better than having a lot of AP courses. Coach Victor, is that true or false?
That is totally false. And this is something I hear on a lot of calls when I'm meeting with families for the first time. They come to us and their student is already in 11th grade, and they would tell us their schedule when they first onboard or when they first are considering their free college assessment. And essentially they'll say like, oh yeah, they're taking all these courses, and we have this schedule because the high school counselor recommended that we take easier courses. The thing is that this is kind of ruining their chances in a way because it's not showing academic rigor. When it comes to academics, your student is going to be compared against two groups of people: their high school and their geographical location. If you're in the Bay Area, unlucky and lucky for you that you're going to be compared to everyone else in the Bay Area as well. And so there's two things that these these college admissions are looking for. One, are you taking advantage of your academic opportunities in your area? And then second, are you demonstrating academic rigor? When it comes to academic rigor, right? One of the things that they want to know is that can you actually graduate from our college? It's not just about getting into our college, but it's about being able to graduate. And so the way that they're able to think about that, right, is through AP courses, IB courses, and also with community college courses or dual enrollment. And that is why that's always one of the strategies that we always recommend to our families is to consider taking dual enrollment courses. And even though you might think it's harder, it can actually be easier for these particular courses. One of the secret tips that we always tell to our students in our program is that use a website called ratemyprofessors.com. RateMyProfessors.com is a way for you to look up professors' reviews and try to take the easiest professor ever. Okay. Sometimes community college courses can actually be easier than the high school courses. I'm sure there are many parents here and also high school students. How many of y'all have seen either your student or even yourself staying up past midnight studying for AP exams or doing AP homework? It's a lot, right? In community college courses, if you're not aware, typically they only have about 3 homework assignments or 4 homework assignments throughout the entire semester, and that's all you have to submit. And also, you might only have to do a few midterms. That being said, right, it can actually be a time saver and smarter thing to do to take those community college or more rigorous courses. I know I kind of jumped in already when it comes to talking about dual enrollment and AP courses, but essentially, um, you need to demonstrate your high academic rigor. And if you aren't taking high academic rigor, uh, it's hard for us as admissions to be able to understand can they actually handle our college and university level. Coach Tony, do you have any thoughts here?
No, I definitely love that as well. I think really quick in the chat, is anyone here from California? By the way, we're recording this live. So for those who are here live and those watching replay, welcome from the past. Really quick for those who are joining us live here, anyone here from California, the state of California? If not, you can let me know what state you're in as well. We can go ahead and rattle a little bit. But just really quick, is anyone here in California? And the chats are yes, California here. The reason why I mentioned, then there's a few ones for other states, New York, Florida, Pennsylvania, awesome, right? So the reason why I mentioned Colorado, the reason why I mentioned California first is that a lot of our families are from California. So I'm gonna start there first, and then we'll talk about the other states too. So from California, don't just take any random class. I think Coach Victor kind of hit it completely right. Of like, yeah, rigor is important, and AP IB community college dual enrollment. When it comes to the class itself, right? We recommend, especially when it comes to California families, you want to take classes from a list called IGETC, right? This list is basically an approved list of the general education courses that are transferable. That is the key as well too. You got to make sure your classes are transferable because again, could you take a class like a business? Could you take a class like a computer science? You could, but you'll find out that a lot of these business and computer science classes actually are not transferable to a lot of schools. So you'll get the credits for it, but you have to retake that class again at the college. So you're kind of doing it twice. You're not being efficient, right? So for us, is if you are going to take it, make sure it's transferable, right? So for California, it's called a GETI. For the other states, by the way, you have your own version too. Because there's 50 states out there, I mean, a lot of families in California. We don't have it all in my head, but we usually find out really quick. By the way, the trick, go to Google, type in your state. So those of you in Pennsylvania, type in Pennsylvania transfer articulation. That's the key. That's the phrase you want to use, right? So Colorado transfer articulation. Florida transfer articulation. New York transfer articulation. That's the list that you want to look up because every single when you pull it up, there'll be a list of classes that's offered. That's the list that you take. It's a really high likelihood that it would be transferable for sure to your state school, but also to a lot of out of state and private colleges as well. So definitely, again, take a peek at that. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in on that too. So 100% Coach Victor, I definitely agree with this there. Cool. Fantastic. All right. Next myth that we hear a lot is my kid did X, Y, and Z to get into this particular school. Just do what this student is doing. So usually they will say, oh, they did this GPA with research, and they'll pick these kind of keywords. And it's just if I just do that, I should be fine. Coach Victor, is that an accurate statement to say?
Uh, yeah, no. The funny thing is that when a parent gets their kid into a really competitive school like Berkeley or some Ivy League, they think they know admissions all of a sudden, right? They're like, oh yeah, I raised this kid, so therefore I know exactly what it takes in order to get to admissions. That is not the case at all. And one of the things that I mentioned from the first part, if you were paying attention, is that they're going to compare your kid against their high school and their geographical location. So that means that if they are not coming from the same area, then they're on a totally different league here. Furthermore, it's based off the cohort that applies. So what that means is even if I were to apply this year versus 5 years from later, right? Yes, you can look at the averages on the websites and the stats that you'll see. But the thing is, the competition is their peers of the people who are applying that same year. So it's kind of unjustified to say all of a sudden that they need to do all these different things in order to work because it could be different each year. Furthermore, one of the things that a lot of parents also tend to say is they uh, might have like some type of discrimination in the process, whether it's like their race or such. The thing is, uh, they can't use race-based admissions in the admission system. And also, the reason why it might feel like that is because your kid is being compared to everyone else in that same school. So, assuming, let's just say that you go to a predominantly high-performing school that has a one particular ethnic group or some sort, they are going to be competing against the same entire group. So therefore, like that's what makes it feel as if it's harder because you are going into a predominantly like competitive area. So depending on which school that you're coming from, there are different expectations. So for example, if you go to a very high performing school, if everyone else is high performing, then of course they would expect that you're high performing too, because what they're assuming is that everyone has the same amount of opportunities and that everyone has access to the same resources. And so they want to know, right? Is this kid taking advantage of what's around them and being able to achieve given what's resources they have? Coach Tony, any thoughts here?
No, that's super awesome. A few things here, right? So I'm kind of running through your notes real fast again as well too. Compare like average. So really quick about discrimination because this has come up a lot this past year because you guys have probably heard the Supreme Court ruling on that back in 2023. But again, a lot of our families again in California, like, oh man, all this stuff as well. Fun fact, California actually had that passed years ago. It was called Proposition 209, back in the day. So California was this way already. So when a lot of people complain about California, I'm like, this is more the other 49 states, not California itself's number one. With this is also plays in the role of legacy. Legacy is another one of those like quote unquote discrimination topics that always comes up every single year as well. And when it comes to legacy, a few comments when it comes to here. When people talk about legacy, I always ask the parent, hey, how much have you donated to these schools there? Because realistically, legacy is, hey, you have donated to the school. And then if your child comes here more, you're going to give us more money. It's kind of the mentality of these kind of top schools. So that's why I always say, how much have you donated? Unless is your name some really fancy last name of a building, right? Is one. The other thing, though, is realistically, however, you're starting to see legacy being phased out at most of these top colleges too, because most schools legacy plays such a teeny tiny role nowadays. There's not even like it's so marginal that it's not even as effective as it used to be like in 20, 30 years ago when admissions was a lot different back in the day too. Okay. But 100%, I think Coach Victor kind of hit it. Everyone has the same amount of opportunities, but here's the reality, it's not, right? And the thing about the admissions process is that that's how readers view, because they have to treat it they have to normalize the whole group because they have to have a certain assumptions, or else it's a chaotic world and it's really hard to compare everyone. That's why there are certain like frameworks, there are certain benchmarks, there's things that readers are kind of they norm, right? They norm themselves to think about. And then if you think about it, that's kind of how games work, right? Games have to have rules. They have to have things in play to make sure it's done correctly. The thing about missions is that if you know how to play the game, that's how you win, right? A lot of people are just thinking. They're these parents, the original question, right? They think just having a GPA, they think just having a certain test score and a certain like activity is the key, and that's actually not. In fact, those are not all the things that causes a student to get in. And the thing is, if you play the game thinking that's the reason and you don't win, that's when families get frustrated with the process. Versus for us, we understand what pieces do matter, right? Again, so and as long as you play with that, and by the way, spoilers, it hasn't changed, right? The thing we told students a long time ago is still the same things today because the frameworks, the rules of the game hasn't changed. It's when people assume the wrong inputs, that's when things, oh wait, I thought this was important as well too. And then when you find out, oh wait, that's not the real reason, right? Like the easy example for you guys is GPA. Everyone and their mothers talk about GPA everything, right? But let's say GPA was the most important factor. Then in theory, if you don't have a 4.8, there's enough 4.8s in the world to fill up the top colleges with 4.8 students, right? So clearly, they're not filled with 4.8 students. There's students with less than a 4.8, less than a 4.0 even, that got into and have succeeded in these colleges, right? So keeping that in mind there, right? But I think Coach Victor, you kind of hit up all the main things there. So let's go on to the next myth. By the way, you guys enjoying this session so far? Are you guys learning some value from these right over here? Go ahead, drop a yes in the chat if you guys are learning a little valuable for you. Next one is gonna be Next one is another counselor says, I helped so many students get into colleges from my school. Of course, I know what it takes to get students in. Coach Victor, we have heard this a lot from a lot of counselors, right? Is this true?
Yeah, absolutely not again. Uh, Unfortunately, what a lot of families have told us in the past is like, well, my high school counselor can definitely help here because they said that they have experience and they know how to get students into Berkeley or like get into some type of top tier school. Well, like, of course, they're gonna have a few students from their school that actually get into the school, right? But did they actually help them every single step of the way? In most cases, I think the high school counselor is just taking credit for what the student actually did. In the most cases, too, for I'm not sure uh, if folks had a similar experience to me back in high school, but they would check in like once every year or one or twice a year at the very most, and all they do is help you select the classes and say, "Oh yeah, these are the classes I recommend," and that's all you need. They're not guiding them about the application on how to write it as much. They're not guiding about what activities, what personal projects they're doing. They're not really guiding much about everything else that happens outside of the course schedule. Again, the high school counselor's job is to help their students graduate from high school, right? They're not necessarily trained or prepped on how to get them into a top tier college. When it comes to the what's that? Oh, that's my train of thought. Uh, what is it? When it comes to the oh yeah, when it comes to like how do they decide on how admissions works, right? Again, it's being compared against all the other students in the same group that's applying at the same time. So generally, right, if you just kind of look at the math of all the students who are applying to the same school from the same school and from the same area, they're going to be compared ones against each other, and there's going to be always a distribution of students where there's students are high performing versus low performing or average performing, right? Because they're always being compared to each other, of course, they're always going to have a few students that get into these big competitive schools. So it troubles me a lot when a lot of high school counselors tend to say that they are responsible for helping all their students to get into all these good colleges. And even for us at College Mission Secrets, like at the end of the day, it's the student that did all the work at the very end. The student is the one that put in all the effort to get their application in and to work on their grades. Yes, we play a large part in it, but when it comes down to it, uh, it should be a little bit of a red flag if like these high school counselors are taking credit for everything that they've done. Coach Tony, what do you think?
100%. I think one of the things that if you notice again, talking about us going back to like a lot of our like success story videos that we've been sharing in our Facebook group on our YouTube as well too. We always have jokes like we didn't do anything. You did the students did the hard work as well too. We kind of just paved the road, right? I think paving the road is definitely important to help students know kind of what they should be doing next. Don't fall here. It's like the idea of a mentor, right? The idea of a mentor. You have someone who's been there, they have done that, they have repeated success continuously for them. So from a student's point of view, hey, I'm just gonna follow this. But again, it's the analogy of like leading a horse to water. I can have the perfect schedule for you, the perfect everything, but if the student's unwilling to put in the work for their classes, if they're unwilling to do the activities, they're unwilling to do the work, unwilling to kind of listen, be coachable, no matter how perfect of a program you have, is not going to work out either, right? So I think a lot of the big pieces is very student driven, student focused. And again, counselors are they're lucky. They get a whole bunch of students. Stats will always say if you have like 5,000 students, at least one will do well, right? At least one of them will be decent and going to school and they get to brag, oh yeah, we sent our kids to X, Y, and Z. But how much, again, for example, how much external factors, right, does these schools have? Like a lot of our students that work with us, again, Coach Victor mentioned Bay Area, very uber competitive field. It's like almost like a joke now. Some parents tell me when they talk to us of like, hey, like I know everyone on my street has a different college consultant working with them as well too, just because that's how competitive it is, right? And who gets to brag about all this? The high school counselors. My school sent so many kids to top schools, but again, do the math. If you do pure math in terms of everything, right? One counselor, how many kids? And even if they give their entire 40 hours a week to all the students, how much actual time is that? per student. I think that's the big difference as well too. Okay.
Yeah.
So that no, I
And
definitely go ahead.
yeah, maybe to add on to that too is like think about the caseload about your school. Many folks here are probably going to high schools that are like 1,000 students, 800, 500 students, and usually there's only maybe four counselors that has to work with everyone. And in reality, right, if you don't know what the high school counselor's role is, it's not just being able to talk to a lot of students. They have a lot of administrative duties too. And those
Mhm.
administrative duties, yes, they're going towards education, but it's not going towards your students' actual college admissions process. So that's just something is that you're not getting the full attention. You're not getting the maintained consistency to check in on a weekly or monthly basis. Again, you're just gonna get two check-ins each year, the very beginning of the year and the very end of the year. And so that's where it can be very problematic if I question too for the high school students here. Do your high school counselors even know your name, right? Like that's just something real to consider as well. And I think it's really important that the counselor hopefully develops a relationship with them. Again, this isn't like to say that counselors are all bad or anything of that sort. I do think there are really great counselors out there, and high school counselors do deserve a lot more praise. I just think that in terms of setting them up for college success, that's a totally different story. Yes, they are really great at being able to help their students graduate and doing a phenomenal job of being able to support their students through mental, social, emotional like well-being. But when it comes to college admissions, right, that's a whole different ballgame.
100%. I think, yeah, keep in mind, right? Folks like us, we do college admissions. That's our 100% thing. Counselors, that's a small chunk of their life. Coach Victor kind of literally just mentioned it, right? There's the high school prep that they had to do. There's the check-ins with the principals and the office staff, working with the teachers. We even talked about the coordinating schedules. How many of you guys have like bad schedules? Like, oh no, we gotta switch. They gotta figure out how to change that as well too. And some students need to talk to someone, right? They jump in, they sit in and talk to your counselor as well too. So after all that, how much time is left for college admissions? So that's why a lot of time you see a lot of just go through a simple PowerPoint. All right, guys, this page right there. This page is very generic information too. Nothing super crazy. Fun little fact: we even have a lot of counselors inside our group. We run literally the largest UC admissions group on Facebook and one of the largest Ivy groups on Facebook. And we have tons of high school counselors who are in both groups taking notes and learning from us. We're actually getting invited to schools to speak as well, just if anyone's interested, right? Little pitch right there. We have counselors inviting us to go talk and kind of teach them and teach their students about the admissions process as well too. So I think Coach Victor was spot on here as well. Perfect. Next one. Next little blurb, right? So I'll talk about neighbors. This is the one thing I thought it stopped at the counselors, but then I realized like my friend this, my sister told me that, and then my neighbor down the street told me this. So one of the big things right here, Coach Victor, some neighbors have told our parents that you need a sob story, a sad story, right? A tearjerker story to get into a good school. Is that true or false?
Not at all. Oh my
Not
gosh.
at all.
Coach Tony and I, we probably read hundreds of personal statements, and there are some pretty tearjerker personal statements that are not good. Uh, because they think that it's all about story, it's all about being able to make them feel a certain way, which is totally false, right? When it comes to the application process, what they want to know is why do you even want to go to college? What do you want to study? And what drives you? In a lot of cases, for a lot of the essays that we've seen, some common mistakes that are very noticeable is one, they write in formal academic writing, like an intro, body, and conclusion, and they follow that kind of structure. And it tends to be the case where the intro is like the sob story, and then they go into everything else, and then they make the intro like the largest part of uh, the entire part of the essay. But the thing is, that's not how you write an application. Some other common mistakes that we do see too is they write about their parents, they write about their communities, they write about issues that don't relate to themselves. One of the kind of pro tips that we tell to our students is that every single sentence needs to have a I, me, or myself in there, meaning that they need to talk about their growth and their learning. Yes, sob stories can be about themselves, right? But it is not the core focus of the actual application. It's about What is it that you learned? What is it the insights that you gained that propel you to get an education? The reason why I would say that a lot of people with uh, sob stories actually get into college, right, is because they have a good reason of why. They actually have something that propels them to want to get to college. So the issue isn't the sob story. The
Mm-mm.
issue is when people spend too much time on talking about a sob story that doesn't actually relate to anything. But some people who do write a sob story, they're able to connect what exactly did they learn from these experiences and how does it connect to why they want to go to a university. And so, yes, it's okay to talk about like a sob story per se, but it is not required in order to be a successful on the college application. And we know this because we've read so many applications and got many students in. And if you missed the intro, Coach Tony was a reader. So, Coach Tony, you probably read a lot of applications while you're a
I
reader.
read so much now that like again and then think the big takeaway if you have to like leave with the section with one thing, the biggest thing is there's two parts to all the essays, right? The what and the why, right? The what and the why are the two big ones that we hear the most, right? So when it comes to the what, that's like the sob story part. But even extending this question a little broader as well too, because right now we're helping our seniors with their essays. Like literally, I just came from a call where we are editing essays nonstop. This is the big mistake that a lot of students do. So if you're a senior, by the way, really quick check in the audience. We're exactly like with that 30-minute mark. What grade is everyone in? Drop in the chat what grade you guys are in. Any seniors, drop a 12. 11th graders drop 11, 10th graders drop a 10, ninth graders 9. Go ahead and drop the grade so I kind of get a gauge of kind of where people are at as well. Got lots of 12th graders. Got a good mix of everyone else as well too. 9, some 10, some middle school families as well too. Some community. All right, so lots of 12. So I'm speaking to 12th graders right now to you all, right? The biggest mistake I'm seeing that you guys are doing is that you're spending too much on the what part of the problem. Again, a common example is the story that makes me cry of like this happened to me, this and that as well too, right? Or a lot of you guys are telling stories of here's what I've done. I did this, or here's where I came from. Story. The other way to think about it is stuff I can see, right? If I can read it and I can visualize it very, very well, that's a what statement. That's a story. Colleges don't care too much about the story. Again, I've read so many that I'm in a sad way. I don't get emotional or sad when I read certain things anymore because it was emotional the first time, the second time, the third time. But today, there's really no more unique stories out there. I think in total, I've read a total of like 5 or 10. I'm like, wow, that is so different. That I've never seen anyone else copy you. But for the most part, all right, a lot of us talk about family. A lot of students talk about family. A lot of kids talk about sports. A lot of students talk about sports. Whatever you can think of, right? I bet you're not creative, you're not original. And it's not your fault. It's just that's how the world is today, right? Everyone's doing a lot of the same things because they think, oh, this is what works. So I'm gonna do the same things. So the what isn't that special, right? What you end up doing, no matter how impressive. Oh my God, I wrote a research paper. I know like 20 more that have as well too. So your what isn't that special. However, here's the key now, right? Going to part two, like Coach Victor mentioned, the kids who did really well, it's not the what that they did well, it is the why. It is the second part of the problem. It's the why. Why did you do that thing? What made you like want to do that, pursue that as well? And the bigger one also is how has that experience, that story, that activity, that identity made you who you are today, right? It's the why, the how, and the last one's the who. Who have you become as a result, right? That's the key of these prompts. And again, going back to the previous statement, or maybe this one, right? It's not an essay, right? It's not an essay. You don't write an intro, body, conclusion, right? It's just telling me about who you are. So the better way to think about these is that if I'm reading it, right, you should be able to read it out loud looking at me, meaning if it should feel like an interview response. If I'm asking you like one of the questions on the prompts is like, tell me why you want to come to this school, or like, oh, tell me why you're this major, right? and you tell me a big story about the environment and all this stuff as well too, that tells me nothing about you. And you wouldn't actually read that. So students who start with quotes, I tell them don't do that. People who use anecdotes, enough, right? Now that's probably a bad example. Use like hooks, questions, right? Don't do those, right? Because again, would you actually look at an interview and ask them a question, right? Not really, right? You want to tell them the exact information itself too. So that's gonna be the big key. And if you want like a those of you who are tactical people who like give me the exact answers, the general kind of framework you want to think about is when you're writing these prompts, whether it be for the personal statement, the supplements, or any of the other ones, you want to keep it the ratio of 30-70, right? 30% what, 70% why. If you cross and you spend more time talking about the story, the what, that's probably not the right approach, right? So you want to spend a lot on what quickly on what you did, but focus it on why. Because what is not going to make you different, because the what, everyone has done the same what. It's the why you did that. That's unique just to you, right? And we can all like, again, you ask 5 students who talk about soccer, right? It's all the same. It's all the same. Actually, let me give you. Can I give you an example? Drop a yes in the chat. You guys know I like the comments. Drop a yes if I can give you guys a real life example of this, of a bad and a good one, in the chat. If not, we can skip it. If you guys don't want an example, we can skip as well. There we go. Well, yeses. All right. Let me give you an example about soccer too, because this is a pretty good one that I see. So, example one, right? Let's say in your personal statement, we talk about soccer. We talk about, to this student, if I had to summarize it, the student's first prompt, they talked about how they loved playing soccer growing up. They talked about having, as a young kid, wearing a really, really big jersey, a soccer jersey. And then they've always watched soccer games on TV, or football, right? Soccer games on TV. And then they've always played it in elementary school, in middle school, in high school. They were actually really good. They actually became junior varsity, varsity. They end up being team captain as well too. And then it was a championship game, and they scored the winning goal and they won. The end. That is an example of a personal statement. I've seen that. You think it's like whatever. I've seen that. Wow, I'm very proud. Let's talk about example number 2. Right? Also about soccer too, by the way, right? Example number 2, a student says, I've always been I've been involved in soccer, not only for the sport of soccer, but it's because it's given me a second family. Growing up as an only child, I had no one else to depend on. I only had myself. So growing up, it was only me, no one else there. When I joined soccer, right, and the interest in soccer came as I watched I sat in a room with my dad and my uncles supporting this, and I didn't have anyone to cheer with because they were all like brothers. So when I joined soccer, I found my own set of brothers, people who can depend on me, people I can depend on. It wasn't easy though. At first, growing up as an only child, I grew a lot of self-independence, right? I was very independent myself, did not need to rely on anyone. But I realized I could not win by myself. I needed to depend on my teammates. At the same time, they depended on me. We played the game. I scored the winning goal. And not only did I win the game, I won it with my family. Boom. If you were a reader, taking back now, if you were a reader and you read those 2 prompts about soccer, right? Which prompt would tell you more about the student? Which one would you take for your school? The student number 1 who talked about how they were an awesome soccer player, or number 2, they were awesome, but it wasn't soccer. It was about them. You guys see the big difference there? The focus should stay on the why. Why is student soccer? It's not just a game. They found a way to depend on other depend on them. It's skills about them as a person. All right, beautiful. Was that useful, guys? You guys like that? Did that make sense? The differences of the two. as well. And that's kind of what we're doing with our seniors, right? We're trying to get, okay, we talked about this. I need to pull out the you factor of this, and that's what makes it different. Awesome. People love it. All right, Coach Victor, number 5. This is a big one, all right? So this we hear this a lot as well too, especially now when this is a big hot topic right now too. A counselor would say attending that expensive summer program that will impress the colleges, that would impress the admission office, especially with like right now for families who are in high school right now around the corner. This is the season where you should be applying for summer programs. They're opening up apps right now. But Coach Victor, is this true? Do you have to attend a expensive summer program to impress the readers?
Yeah. So let me be kind of frank here or blunt in terms of how I typically react when I hear this from the families. No one cares at all
Yeah.
about what program you actually went to. What matters the most is about what did you learn from those experiences. Yes, summer programs could be great, even if the ones that are paid, whichever, but you don't need to go to a 1 week trip to Harvard in order to have a higher chance to get into Harvard at all. Because one, that would be unfair to a lot of families, right? If we based admissions on what do they have access to, then we would live in a totally different society. And I think in that
Mm,
society, it would be super unfair for a lot of families who can't even afford those programs. You do not need to be in the most prestigious programs to get into a prestigious school. Okay. That is just the bottom line. What matters the most, right, is about what did you learn from these experiences. It's about the why, like what Coach Tony said. And to take it even further, it's about the emotional maturity. And what I mean by emotional maturity is that the student has a strong sense of self. They understand more about themselves from these experiences. One of the things that these admissions wants to understand is the student taking initiative to put themselves out there to learn more about themselves. Are they participating in the activities that they think that they're interested in? And what did they get from it? Right? That's why we talk a lot about personal projects. A personal project is something that this student has worked on, that they care about, that they are really passionate about, and that is 100% more effective than going to any expensive summer program. Because the thing is, the student is putting in all the effort. They are the ones controlling the experience. So for summer programs, right, I think a lot of parents might tend to think that that's just the way to go and that's the way to be able to stand out. But that's just because it's already planned for you. It's easy to just send your kid to a summer camp and then to be able to like have them get experience out of it, right? That's the easy way out. The harder way is for the student to figure out what do they actually want to do. We had our college app intensive a few months ago, and one of the things that I learned from reading the essays, which I thought was really powerful, there's this student who was interested in mechanical engineering. And the reason why they were interested in mechanical engineering was because they took the entire summer to build their bike from scratch, like using spare parts from everything and built their own bike and eventually built like other kinds of things for their bike as well. That is an amazing personal project because it shows that they found something that they love. They found something they're interested in, and they wanted to learn more about mechanical engineering so that they can advance that learning even more, right? So two things that's showing there. One, it's showing that this student is taking initiative. Two, this student is intentional about what they want to learn next in order to advance that growth, right? So attending these summer programs, yes, it'll give your student exposure. And yes, it might be able to give them a good experience that they could be able to highlight on the application. But admission officers just don't care if they went to a summer program. That is the what. That is the 30% of the what.
mhm.
The why, again, is the most important thing. And sometimes, right, it's more influential and impactful for the student to go through their own personal project with some coaching and guidance to learn more so they can reflect off of someone. There, if they're when it comes to experiences, there's two things. There's one, the exposure part, but the second part is the reflection part. Okay. The reflection part is about what did you learn from that experience? Is your child, or are you, if you're the student, learning from these experiences and reflecting off of it after you've done it? If you go to a summer program and you didn't learn anything from it and you walk away and you just have something on your resume, you didn't gain anything from it. You got a bullet point on your resume, sure, but that actually didn't give you anything substantial. So what's important is, are you able to have a summer program or summer experience where you can reflect with somebody at the end of the day to say, what did you learn? So that's why we work on personal projects with students, because when they work on that personal project, and in our monthly coaching calls, we'll ask them like, hey, like, what did you make? Awesome. All right, cool. What did you learn from that whole entire experience? Oh, great. Okay, what is it that you want to learn next? Right? Asking those questions to your child is going to be extremely important to help them advance their emotional maturity. All right, I'll pause there. Coach Tony, any thoughts?
That's amazing. I think one of the thing about personal projects is, again, for those, again, it's also known as passion projects. You guys probably heard of the word passion projects. But think about I never liked the word passion projects. The reason why is no one really knows what they're passionate about realistically. So when I tell a student or a parent passion projects, like a lot of this stuff is like just rewiring how students think and how parents think, right? Because if I say passion projects, you guys go back to the same thought about research or internships, like I have to have it because why? Because other people are doing it, so I need to do it too. No, right? So it's not that. You don't have to do something that looks good for college. The idea of a personal project is you're doing something that's personal to you and you're sharing it with like a community, right? That's pretty much what it is at the core. That's literally what it is. And that's the big key thing as well, right? I think one of the other kind of takeaways of this, or like the reflection, which I think is huge, is that when it comes to personal projects, the end goal isn't getting it done. Sure, that'll be awesome, right? If they finish their actual project. But for a lot of our students, they actually never finish it, quote unquote, right? Their goal is so big. Their goal is a multi-year, not even just in high school, not just college. It's like something that goes past college, right? That's something they're really invested in, right? Because again, how many students do you know do something? And what bugs me a lot, nonprofits, kids create quote unquote nonprofits only to drop it 2 years down the line because they're in college now, right? Then you're cheating the system. You try to do something, and then imagine you're making all the other nonprofits who are actually working and doing the work look bad and feel bad, right? So again, those are just projects you're helping, right? But the big thing, the personal project idea, it's never the result, it's the journey. The journey is the most important part of the whole thing. We've had students who have started a personal project that has absolutely failed. Like their idea of like, I want to do this, I'm like, perfect, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Nothing has worked out. Nothing they have planned actually came true. However, we tell them, take a pause, look backwards a bit. You've done so many things. You've learned never to get. We had a student who was building a a some tech thing. I forgot what it was, but some tech thing. And everything they did did not work. But then when we talked to them a year later, we're like, hey, yes, we're still not there, right? We're still not at the prototype that we wanted. But look back, you have done like 20, 30 iterations of this. You not once have given up, right? You not once kind of say, oh, well, each thing opened up a new discovery for you. Each one made you learn more of who you are as a person to not give up and keep wanting to do more of that thing too. And I tell you, pause real fast. Are you still excited to keep moving forward? And the student's like, absolutely yes. That type of person, that's real passion, right? We don't want to say that because at the beginning the students were like whatever, right? But that's true passion. They're so invested in something that they're gonna keep pushing on and on and on and on. And why personal projects work really really well is that parents, I'm sure you guys are tired of telling your kids to do stuff is the biggest thing too. So for us, what's our trick? We tell students on when it comes to your activities, there are only two things you have to do. Number one, do things you enjoy, and number two, do things you think you might enjoy. And that's it. Those are the two things that you should have on your activities, right? Because everything you think like realistic you do derives from one of those two. And number two will go back to number one, right? So definitely love that there. And Coach Victor, I think we have time for like maybe one more. You guys like it? So I have a quick check. I have some questions. If you guys can drop your questions, we might do a little Q&A at the very end as well. One thing that we hear a lot, Coach Victor, from a lot of parents, they tell us that high school counselors are the same as college counselors. So why do you even need a college counselor? What's your 2 cents when it comes to this?
Let me think of an analogy. Would you trust a dentist to be your ophthalmologist? Would you trust someone that is responsible for uh, your teeth to work on your eyes, right? And the thing is, when it comes to high school and college, there are two different ball games, right? Again, one of the things I mentioned at the very beginning, high school counselors are incentivized to help their students graduate and get through high school. Okay. So they care about the social emotional well-being. They want to make sure that their students can graduate and also that they fill up those classrooms so that they're not wasting any resources. That's their goal, right? Nothing about those goals actually has to do with college admissions. Sure, they will help you create a schedule that can optimize for college admissions, but do they actually understand what admissions is like? Have they actually worked in admissions, right? In most cases, no, because the high school counselor training is very different. High school counselor training is really about how to support adolescents and how to make sure that they are successful in their teenage years. College counselors, admission counselors, right, are essentially the people that are either worked in admissions, so they have insider knowledge about how the system works. They're trained from the actual admissions office. So why do you even need them? Well, if you are invested to make sure that you or your student has the highest chance possible to have as many different opportunities as possible to be able to get into college, then you need a strategy to be able to get in. Did you know that it's different if you apply to different majors? Depending on your major, you have to have a different strategy, right? Is that something your high school counselor will know? Didn't even know what strategy, right? How can they if they only have so many limited courses at their high school, right? Let's assume that you go to a high school that has a magnet program. A magnet program is like they have a certain occupation, uh, like training for a particular field, like say engineering, for example. That's what actually was offered at my school. And your kid wants to go to pre-med. Well, you don't have any courses on pre-med. You don't have any kind of courses that you could take at your high school. So the resources at your high school are limited. So that being said, you need to go out of your high school and be able to seek out those opportunities yourself where they can get exposure to pre-med. And so when it comes down to it, it's just a totally different field that with the college counselors, they have a deep understanding of what's the best strategy to be able to get in and how to optimize for that. All right, Coach Tony, what about you?
Love it. No, I think that your analogy is actually really good. The dentist and the orthom. I probably wrote it wrong. Your eye doctor, your teeth doctor, and your eye doctor as well. I'm gonna throw another analogy that might make sense to a lot of families here as well too. Really quick. Does anyone here have to pay taxes? Let me know in the chat if any parents here have to pay taxes. Right. So think about this, right? Taxes, something we probably can't avoid, right? One of those things that was a tax. There you go. Yeses, right? Can't we avoid taxes? Do you guys do your own taxes? Right? It is the other thing too. Some of you guys might, right? Some of you might do your own taxes, right? However, me, a lot of folks, we have somebody for this. We have somebody to help with this, right? That doesn't mean we can't do it. I'm sure we are more than capable of doing our thing, but they're just a lot better. There's a lot better, and they can help us save some more money, right? As well too. So again, we hire an accountant. Accountant, right? Anyone here buy a house yet? Anyone here homeowners, right? Buying a house, right? Buying a house, a home, as well too, right? Could you buy it on your own? In theory, you can. There's a bunch of apps, and we live in 2024 now as of time of this recording, right? There. Could you buy a home? You could buy a home by yourself, right? But it's a little hard to. It's a little hard to. You probably need help from different people, right? Loan officer, a real estate agent, a broker, right? You might need help, right? Loan officer, mortgage person, a realtor, a broker as well too. Let's talk about college. For a lot of you guys in here, college will be your second biggest expense ever in your life after your home. So you're to tell me that you get help with taxes. Some of you might buy a car, store a car in there, right? Unless you use like Carvana, where you like the vending machine for cars, right? You probably talked to a car salesperson, right? As well too, right? When you do stuff, you talk to people, right? When you buy a home, you get help. But you're telling me your second biggest expense, college, what for some families, 120. If you're aiming for the Ivies, that's like $250,000. You're not gonna get help. You're willing to YOLO this on your own. As well, right? So I think that's the one thing I was telling, like, oh, that's a little interesting, right? You're willing to do not get help with certain parts, but with the second biggest expense. One of the things is more like an investment tool to help set your child up for success. Not say you can't do it on your own, but are you confident enough in yourself to make that happen as well? So with that being said, we're running to some Q&A. But one thing before we do, you guys can see Coach Victor literally tons of knowledge, wealth of knowledge as well. Something we want to do, we want to help you out, right? Maybe you guys don't sign up with us. That's perfectly cool. We're still here. Our mission is to help as many families as we can through these trainings, through materials, or even through our coaching programs. But again, not pitching the coaching program today. If you guys just want to make sure you're on the right track, because that's probably the hardest part. Are we on the right track? If so, if not, how can we do the next steps? If you guys want to go ahead and book a free 15-minute chat with our team just to kind of see where you guys are at. We'll ask you questions. We'll give you some feedback on what you should be doing next, right? As well, too, you can share more myths with us that you've heard, and we can kind of break those as well. But if you want to go ahead and book that 15-minute chat, go ahead and drop that in the chat. And Coach Victor, we have a few quick questions in the chat as well. If you could help us with that. Question one, how long have you guys been doing this, and how do you know all these myths so well?
Oh, wow. We've been well, many years. How many years is that? Let's
15,
see.
16 years now. Yeah, I think me and Coach Victor, there's actually a picture of us back in Berkeley when we were wee lads. I've known Coach Victor a very, very long time. There's a reason when I think a lot of families who jump on these free coaching calls and get Coach Victor as the advisor. By the way, if you want to chat with Coach Victor directly, you let me know, slide my DMs. I'll help coordinate it so you guys can actually chat with him directly as well too. He's known me a long way. We both worked in admissions. We've learned directly together. So like how when he mentioned like someone close to the source, right? How can you know how to do something? Just know what they're looking for, right? And that's kind of what we've been doing and how we kind of got really good in this space, I would say, is just knowing that as well too. So 15 plus years. Longer than a lot of the kids have been alive is the thing as well. And then another one, would it be right to take an intro physics class through community college, use credits to waive classes in college, senior, want to take courses before I graduate, move-in day? In theory, you can, right? You could take those classes as well too. Make sure it's transferable. That's kind of the big answer for you there. Well, perfect. Awesome. I see a few people start booking already, so thank you everyone. If you guys want to get it one more time, go ahead and book it here. Any closing words for this training here, Coach Victor?
Uh, I think one of the hardest fears I think a lot of people have is just asking for help, right? I think a lot of us, including myself way back in the day too, we think that we could do everything ourselves because yeah, I like, I'm intelligent, we're smart, I can do this, I can be able to learn everything. But the thing is like you can't get through, I mean, life unless you actually get support from others in general. I guess that's what the soccer story that Coach Tony said actually with the example too. The thing is, like me and Coach Tony wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all the kind of the support, the mentors and people that have helped us get to this point. So similar to that, I think for us, that's why we hosted this particular session is that you need to increase the people in your village, the village of the people that will take care of you or your child. And you're being a responsible parent if you are bringing in more experienced people into that village.
Awesome.
Coach Tony?
Cannot end it better myself. So we'll leave it at that for this call. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll see you guys in the next call.